And we're back. It's another, obviously, Fight Talk live chat. I'm your host, Robert Palin, and I'm joined, as always, I'm going to just say as always now because it seems to be the way, apart from a few stumbled along the way, Jason from MMA on Point, Jason Hartley. Jason, how are you? You're back from UFC 229 in Vegas. How was the weekend?
Oh my God. Wild. Absolutely wild. I've never been to Vegas before. I was telling some other guys because I met, there were just a ton of Irish out there. And of course, Tom was there. Tom's from England. And I just kind of let them know, it's like, it took me about as long as it took you to get here. From Tennessee, we had one layover and it took me about 5 hours. Some guys I know it took like 10 hours because they're from like the northern tip, but Tom, it took like 8 hours to get there.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to get there from just inside the continental U.S. to the other side because we're, middle Tennessee. So, I mean, it's about the length of the country almost, about three quarters.
That always blows my mind that you take longer to travel in your own country than somebody from a different country coming over and a different island, which is a different continent. As I said, this is a live chat, an MMA live chat. If you haven't been involved in these before, we basically answer your questions. We look at the comments that you put in the YouTube chat and we answer them. And we have some things that we want to talk about. Obviously, you can see it in the show title. A big event went down last weekend, UFC 229.
What?
A big brawl happened. Jason was there. Jason might have instigated it. I'm not saying he did, but possibly. But as I always say, if this chat is bad, I blame the viewers. I blame the bad questions. But no, really, there's lots of things to talk about. We're going to start with Khabib and Conor and UFC 229. I, of course, give my thoughts on the whole thing on this week's episode on Tuesday. But Jason, I haven't heard what you want to say about it, so I want to hear your thoughts, and I'll expand a little bit on what I want to say about it as well. And there's been loads of fallout since Khabib today, if you haven't seen. He said that he will basically cut his contract with the UFC if the UFC get rid of his boy. I'll try his name in a minute, but the guy that punched Conor from behind, I think it was, and the guy that's supposed to fight next weekend, but he won't be fighting next weekend. He got pulled. There's 2 Bellator cards this weekend, 2 big cards as well. The semi-finals of the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix are on that card. Matt Mitrione versus Ryan Bader and Fedor Emelianenko versus Chael Sonnen. 2 kind of weird fights, especially the Fedor and Chael Sonnen one. Whoever thought we would have saw that, but we will. There's some other news as well. You have Al Iaquinta versus Kevin Lee announced for UFC Milwaukee, and you also have the return of Johnny Bones Jones, who will fight Alexander Gustafsson for the second time at UFC 232. So first I want to get your thoughts on UFC 229. First I want to start with the fight, and then we can talk a little bit about the brawl. We won't stay too long on this, but we'll answer all your questions as well. If you want to put them in the chat right now, I'll have a look through. But yeah, your thoughts on the brawl and the fight. Fight first.
Jesus, what a task. Well, first off, let me give credit to the card itself. The fights were incredible. Like the entire night. I mean, from being there in the arena, we were there at, I don't know, about 2:30 is when we walked in. Maybe a little later, maybe closer to 3. But for the 8 hours or so that we were in there watching the fights, it blew by because the fights were just all that good. From Ryan LaFleur getting head kicked all the way in the beginning to Derrick Lewis getting that knockout and the very, very, very last moment. I mean, I think there were 30 seconds left in that round where Volkov was just punishing him, and then there was Pettis doing a really good job, a lot better than a lot of people thought he would do against Ferguson. Incredible fight. And then you had the Khabib fight, and Khabib was incredible. I think once we got in here, somebody was asking what time it was. It definitely is Khabib time. That's 100% sure. And it was shocking in the fact that, I mean, people were saying this, that people would be surprised what Khabib would be able to do on the feet. And maybe they would even be surprised by Conor. I don't know how much Conor did surprise people. I think he did maybe a little bit better than people expected, but he fell into the quicksand. And Al Iaquinta made it out of it, for all the stuff that Conor kind of made fun of him for being a number 11 ranked real estate agent. Iaquinta made it through it. Conor didn't. And he got gorilla choked. And I know a lot of people are saying, I think Michael Bisping was right to say that he felt that Conor kind of gave up, because I think if anybody wouldn't have tapped to that, it would have been Michael Bisping. Yeah. Because Michael Bisping, the one thing Michael Bisping has in spades is heart. He may have never been the biggest technician, almost kind of like what Derrick Lewis was saying in his post-fight. He was like, man, these people are better than me. Like, he said that. He's like, these people are all better than me, but what I got is I got power and I got heart.
He also says he's not ready for a heavyweight title because he needs to get some cardio, but that changed. I didn't mention that at the top. We'll talk about that as well.
It's so funny because his voice was so low that from inside the arena, I couldn't tell anything he was saying. It's like there's too much bass in the speakers or something, and his voice is so low. It's almost like the Giant from like WCW. I guess he's Big Show now, but like the voice is so low, it's almost like outside of the human spectrum for what you're supposed to hear. You know what I mean? Like it just like falls outside of that. And in a big arena like that, you just couldn't hear anything. You could hear everybody else fine, but wild. So the whole like balls thing, I didn't even realize he said that. I could hear people laughing, but they were all in front of me. And I was about mid-range. I wasn't back in the nosebleeds. I was in a really good spot. But anyhow, the real thing that people are wanting to talk about is the whole incident afterwards, which, god damn, there is so much. Somebody says you and Bisping is wrong. What are you talking about, Jurian? Anyhow, how am I wrong about Bisping? Bisping had tons of heart. Anyhow, but it was one of those crazy events where I hated this when Conor did the whole and it did a lot to sell the fight. It really did. And if they do some sort of rematch down the line, which I don't think is right to do now, I think Conor got walloped. I think he got beat down. I don't think there's any reason to do an immediate rematch. I don't think that makes any sense by any stretch of the imagination. But this leaves like a really bad taste in my mouth. Like, I hated it when Conor did it. I don't even think I did a video about when Conor did it. All the stuff that I made about Khabib was prior to the event. I haven't made a video about this. Like, it's not that I wouldn't necessarily. Maybe I thought about making a video just kind of discussing, is it really bad for the sport? And I think that's the real question. Like, is it actually bad for the sport or not? And I think if you're a fight fan, it was actually great for you. Yeah. You actually really enjoyed it, like most fight fans did. But it is true that the Nevada State athletic, or not the governor, actually ran out of the building.
Did you see that
stuff? I didn't see it happen, but you saw, like, dude, there was a guy that was standing next to me. We were talking the entire time, and I had a group of people that was hanging out with me. There was a dude that was next to me, and this was this guy and a bunch of other people. As soon as that melee broke out, dude just ran out of the building. I saw a bunch of people
do that. Probably a good choice,
so,
to be fair.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, you're looking at a place where a riot literally could have happened.
Yeah.
Like, I in that building, being in that room, like, it started to get really, really tense. Like, there were like small pockets of like I don't know, Khabib fans that were just kind of shouting out, like Khabib, like chanting for him. But then there was like way bigger pockets of Irish and just Conor McGregor fans that were shouting back at him. And it's funny that it ended up being the Irish fans that ended up getting beat up the worst from all the videos I've seen, considering they definitely had the numbers. But it was just really, really toxic. And it did get this kind of like near riot feeling. So I actually understood, being in the arena, why Dana White didn't want to put the belt on him, didn't want to have a post-fight interview, because it happened as Khabib walked out. I was on the side where they go back through, just kind of the tunnel where they're going back to the backstage area. I was on that side as they were coming back through. And you could see people starting to pelt him as soon as there was basically an opportunity. And I think something like that would have happened. And it did feel like a near riot type kind of scenario. There's a bunch of bullshit I've seen too. I've seen people posting videos of Khabib fans after the fight, like rejoicing. And there's these massive, were during the daytime. This was at night. It's 10 o'clock there. I know it's in Las Vegas, and I know it's Pacific time, but it was dead night for a few hours already. So there's a bunch of bullshit I've seen get posted. But yeah, I mean, and sorry if I'm scatterbrained about this. There's just so much goddamn stuff. It's crazy,
Yeah.
But I remember just kind of like looking around at my, like Tom's right next to me and just being like, holy shit, Khabib did it. He just, he like destroyed Conor. And then I remember looking back up and just all of a sudden, because you're not necessarily paying attention, you're really far away. But I just remember all of a sudden looking up, and there's Khabib like running right past an official. and the guy's trying to grab him and trying to stop him, but there was just no stopping him. And then you see him jump into the crowd, plain as day, and then it goes crazy. And it's interesting because a lot of people have gotten onto the media for not calling out the fact that Conor punched somebody. I don't want to say that was Zubaira that he punched. I'm not sure which guy it was that he punched. It was really especially hard to tell inside the arena. But when you're there, you're only seeing things that your eye catches. You're not catching all these little things that are going on. Like when Conor was trying to jump over himself and he got stopped. And then it was one of Khabib's guys that tried to jump over. So Conor hit him while the melee was already going on. By the way, I've seen every single media member that has talked about this. Every single media member has acknowledged that punch. People are acting like the media is like suppressing this. Fans are so much more biased than they perceive media to be, like in general. Like, I don't mean the people in this chat, but people are so much more biased because they're all about Khabib right now. So hardcore
Khabib's
that if
so hot
anything is positive, he's so hot right now, Zoolander. That if anything is said positive about Conor or in any way disparaging about Khabib, it's taken as bias for Conor.
Yeah, that's
because
the thing.
Conor gets a lot of press, so it's just seen as that. But Conor is also the reason why this is a big fight. Khabib is now a star. Khabib did the genius thing of just kind of rearranging the narrative. He threw back what Conor put in his face. He put right back in his face. But it sucks. I hate it. Like, I want the whole situation to be over. Like, I don't want this to become like a normal thing. Like, I don't want John Jones in DC, if they end up fighting again, I don't want this happening there.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to say, oh, there shouldn't be any penalties because, oh, well, they didn't do anything to Conor. And now they haven't, I guess they have done some stuff to Khabib, and that was what Khabib's kind of demanding. Or they did stuff to guys that were, you know, basically a part of his corner or part of his team that came out and, you know, got involved in the melee inside the cage. And especially hit Conor. And then Rizvan Magomedov, he's, you know, the guy that does all his translating that was there or used to do his translating. And he's just kind of his, he's the dominant MMA kind of side in Russia.
Yeah.
He's like that end of things. God, I'm so scatterbrained. I'm so all over the place because
it's hard
so
to pin
much
down your thoughts, isn't it, as well? And what I found as well from this was that immediately everyone started giving their opinion on it, and I was almost guilty of that as well, because it happens and you're live tweeting or whatever, so you try to give your opinion on the whole thing, but you haven't seen all the facts yet. You haven't seen everything that has happened, so it's kind of difficult to pin down your exact thoughts on it.
Well, somebody's saying that I don't know the timeline. And MMA buds, dude, all you do all the time is you just go after members of media. And frankly, it's super annoying. Like, that's all you do, dude. Like, I'm super, super tired of seeing it on my Twitter feed. Like, dude, like, you're a member of MMA media, and you're constantly trying to nip at the heels of people that are successful in the medium. And you're not, dude. Like, you're not, straight up. It pisses me the hell off. Like, stop doing that. Like, that's cowardly. I have no respect for that whatsoever. Like, stop spending all your time doing that. Like, get a job or something. I don't know what you do for a living. I should not be saying this, but dude, it pisses me the fuck off when people are so goddamn biased about what they see here that any little slight is taken as some sort of, like, it's not even a slight. They're just covering both sides of it, or as they see it, they're responding to it. And you're like, oh, you're biased. You didn't see this one little video that came out at like 5 a.m. on East Coast side, or not on East Coast side, in Las Vegas time. That one little video that showed Conor McGregor punching, nobody saw that until like 5 a.m. Pacific time.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the reason.
Of course they weren't talking about it. It didn't exist yet. Nobody knew it.
We got a lot of criticism on the show from people because we basically said that there's not a whole lot of point in arguing why the fight happened and who's worse. It's almost, for me, it's almost like, you know, the big brother little brother argument, where it's like you do something bad, but then you bring something back that happened last week, and like, oh well, look what he done last week, and he only done this, and he only got this punishment. Why do I get this punishment? I think it's not helpful to have that argument, because there's always going to be something that escalated first. Where I wanted to leave it this week, and my whole thoughts on it, is that what Conor done was bad, and you can say that what Conor done first was worse, and I probably wouldn't even argue with that. But the fact is that they were both bad actions. They both deserve some kind of punishment. There's no point in arguing which one is worse. It just doesn't make any sense, and you're going to go down this rabbit hole of escalations that happened a year ago or 6 months ago or 3 months ago. For me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, like the way I see it is there has to be a point where it gets stopped, right? Like it's going to be unfair for somebody. Like if they don't stop it now and they decide to let it go and they decide to let all Khabib's guys, just fight and, continue to be in his corner. If they decide to do that, then the next person who does it can now point to the past and say it's unfair. And I get in this situation, it's reciprocal. It's like, oh, well, Conor got away with it. I'm his opponent. Why can't I get away with it too? Because I'm his opponent. But I don't think it's quite that isolated. I think they should have been way harder on Conor, and I was super pissed when Conor did it. And I think you should be super pissed now. I think you should be both pissed at both situations. Maybe there is a bit of retribution, and I get that Conor is getting his own medicine. I think it's genius what Khabib did to an extent. I don't think he planned it, but I think he turned the narrative. I mean, like, we were talking about the pre-fight press conference had like 4.8 million views. That's where it's at now.
Yeah.
The post-fight, and it's because of Khabib's post-fight interview, it's like 8.7 million.
Wow.
It's so much higher. So much higher. It's just insane. So, yeah, everything has flipped towards Khabib, and that's the genius of the situation.
Yeah.
Conor used controversy to promote the fight. He used controversy to a bigger effect after the fight. And I don't think it was planned. I just think that's ended up happening. I think it's worked out in his favor big time. I think Khabib is a much bigger star. And it's really hard to say where things are now, but I think everybody's going to be trying to watch his next fight. I don't know if it breaks 1 million buys. That's going to be the real thing. That was the question for Nate Diaz, especially if they did let him have the main event of 230. But I don't know.
What's your thoughts on Khabib coming out today and saying that if Dana White releases his teammate, and I will get his name up, I do apologise to the gentleman. It's very difficult to say, I can't remember it. But if they do release his teammate, that they can release him as well because they're brothers, basically. What was your thoughts on that statement? Do you believe Khabib? Because I tend to believe him.
Well, there are people in the comments that I just got to say, Jason, they planned it. Zubair confirmed it was planned. It was not planned. None of that was planned. Like what happened. So people want to talk about like the sequence of events. Rizvan Magomedov went up behind Dylan Dennis. If you look at Mike Russell's Twitter account, there's a video of this. He touched Dylan Dennis on the back. He was kind of like talking shit as he was going into the cage. That's when Dylan Dennis pushed him. Khabib saw that and then he ran and jumped out. That's the basic genesis of things. And you could say Dylan Dennis did the worst thing by pushing. So that's fair too. You could actually say now that Conor's team actually did start it. So, I mean, people are talking about how like, I don't know, like I've somehow got the order of things. I was there, dude. You're like watching on TV. I was there and I don't know. This is what I do for my job. So don't tell me I don't know what's going on. Sorry. It's just there's so much shit going on here. And that it just blows my mind that the way that people are responding to it, and they're cool with it. Like they were super pissed at Conor. Now they're super cool with it for Khabib. It's because Khabib's popular now and Conor's not. It's just like you have to be the same about it. And if you're the UFC, dude, this position sucks for them because if they don't do something, then the fans, they've already turned on them because they use the Conor stuff to promote the fight. It's just so fucked up because there's no right situation that you can do here. And the UFC did fuck up. Like, oh
yeah, the UFC did fuck up, yeah. But I think, have you seen the interview we done with Miles Price this week? I don't know if anybody in the chat has seen it.
Interview. I
think Miles Price put it exactly the way I put it as well, is that you understand where Khabib was coming from because Conor went way far. And I don't know if you can say that Conor went too far because in this game, in the fight promotion, like, where do you draw the line? But I just mean he did go so far against somebody who that isn't something that he's used to. But that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean you can condone it. He went way far, but that doesn't mean you can condone it. I thought Miles Price, who was actually a former teammate of Conor McGregor, used to train at SBG, and now he's spending some time over at AKA, so he has sparred with both guys. But I thought he put it in the right way. I thought he said the right thing, that you can't condone what Khabib done, but you can't understand why it escalated to that level, I guess.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you have to think of it from the UFC's perspective. Like, what do? On one of your broadcasts, this happened. And that's the thing that's biting them in the ass, because they did not treat the Conor situation. They were just happy to go with the slap on the wrist that the law gave Conor McGregor. That was a bad call. But here's the other side of it. What if they didn't book the fight? What would people be saying? They'd be saying, oh, they missed an opportunity. Pay-per-view sales are down. Why would they miss this big opportunity? You can't win if you're the UFC in this situation. And I'm not saying that. I mean, I think that the UFC fucked up. I think the safe decision would have been to give him a suspension. Like they would have just had to eat the criticism that their major pay-per-view star was being laid off for a few months and being fined. Somebody was saying he got fined millions of dollars. No, he didn't. He got fined for the bus and damages in the bus. He's getting sued for potentially millions. He's probably going to settle out of court with everyone. I mean, there's a security guard that's suing him in addition to Michael Chiesa. I mean, he's probably going to settle most of this stuff out of court. It's probably going to be under $1 million for at least both of those. I don't know what else he's got going on, but you look at the fines for a bus, dude, it's not millions. He should have been punished way more than he was. And now we're in this shitty situation where it's like, this is the part that sucks. Like, this is what I was kind of getting at earlier. If you're inside the MMA bubble, you're like, whatever, it's a fight. It's not really that big of a deal. But if you're in one of those territories, like right now, like Tom was telling me that on like the BBC, they actually posted about it. The BBC never posts about fights ever. And of course they posted this negative news. I mean, negative stuff just does sell more. And so of course they went with that. And all the top comments were like, this is a barbaric sport. This has no place in society. So if you're trying to get bigger in places like England, you're trying to get bigger in places. I mean, like even Ireland. Yeah, John Kavanagh was talking about that on the Joe Rogan podcast. He has to now go sit and talk with those elders that aren't into MMA, don't understand MMA, don't really care for MMA, and kind of convince them that it's not some brute, wild, just ridiculous sport, and not even sport from their eyes. I mean, they just see it as, the classic cage fighting mantra. So it's a shitty situation. We shouldn't be encouraging stuff like this. There's a short-term gain where we had a big event, and then now we've had this big fallout from it. But if you're in any of those territories, I mean, like how recently was Australia just getting legalized to do events?
Yeah.
That's why Perth was such a big deal earlier this year, because it wasn't possible not long ago. Or if you look at the votes in New York City to have the UFC come to, or just MMA in general, you look at the stuff that people are saying, they're saying this is legalized sanctioned violence. That's the kind of stuff that they're saying.
Yeah.
Those people did not die in the past 2 years. They still exist, and they're still here, and that's why this shit is bad. It's good if you're in the community. I get that. It might energize you. You might personally like it. But if you're that person that's lobbying and trying to go to these places and trying to make sure it's illegal, it sucks. It's bad for you. And they're... Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just I have a thing up here. I don't know if you can open up the video. You could probably be able to see it now, and the people in the chat will be able to see it. And we will answer your questions as well, so get your questions in. There's also a poll. If you click there's like a little eye icon up to the top right of the video, and there's a question there: will the Khabib Conor rematch, the immediate rematch, happen? Vote on that, because I want to actually have a discussion around that. And you said it shouldn't happen, but I think there's plenty of reasons why the UFC want this to happen. But this is an article done by Peter Carroll, we call him PT over here. He's an Irish journalist that actually writes for MMA Fighting, and he just gave a kind of a little example of what we saw in Ireland and all the newspapers on the front page after the brawl happened. And it was all negative stuff. And MMA in Ireland, even though the biggest fighter, the most popular fighter, the most popular probably sportsman, or at least one of them,
biggest box office guy,
comes from this comes from this little country. MMA is not seen as a mainstream sport over here in terms of a lot of things. So you can get a kind of an idea of what they were going with here. It's pretty much all bad.
Gotcha. Is it playing? Oh yeah, I have it paused on mine so it doesn't slow down my connection. I'll just have to miss it.
Yeah. But. So it's pretty much all you can't really read it, but it's all bad publicity. But basically, my question is bad publicity a bad thing for MMA? You kind of answered it there. For the greater audience, I guess it isn't, but it is, but maybe not for the audience inside. Yeah,
I agree with that. Like, I mean, if you're already an MMA fan, whatever, some of that stuff is even legendary. You think of the Strikeforce brawl and stuff like that. it arguably made the Diaz brothers bigger, you know? So if you're an MMA fan, you don't really care. You're just like, whatever, it's fighting. I don't really care, you know, and then you know everything that went into it. You know everything that Conor said to him, and you know there's this natural reciprocation that kind of comes back to him for saying all that stuff. But if you're outside of the sport and that's all you see, you don't necessarily get the context of everything. And frankly, you probably don't even care about the context of everything. You just care that you saw dudes brawling outside of the cage. Or back in April rather, you saw Conor McGregor throwing a dolly at a bus and causing chaos. It's not a good look. And I don't see or understand the need or the feel to defend either man. There are people that were defending Conor back in April, and there are people that are defending Khabib now. And I think it's because Khabib's popular now. It's as simple as that. Like, people like him now.
He's more popular now.
He's way more popular now, and he should be. I mean, what he did was incredible. I mean, we were there. We were freaking out. Like, Tom literally, like, the entire fight, he was like, "Conor's getting fucked up, dude. He's getting fucked up." You know, we were tripping out. I mean, it was an exciting, electric atmosphere, and I mean, you couldn't ask for a better outcome. You know, like, you got a definitive finish. Obviously, it's not good for Conor, but as a fight fan, I mean, there's nothing more exciting than seeing somebody rise to the occasion and dominate like that in the way that you thought they possibly could, you know? So, I mean, I'm overjoyed for Khabib getting the win. I'm overjoyed for seeing him do well. That's generally my feeling of any fight. I try not to go in with any favorites because, I mean, I find the sport to be way funner when you're not pissed off at the end of the night and you're not thinking about, oh, man, the guy I was really rooting for. I mean, it's just better to be objective watching the fights, I think. But.
So the question is, will the immediate rematch happen? And on the surface, I think we all say no. For a lot of reasons. I think that the first fight that happened on Saturday night wasn't competitive. I don't really see a route to victory for Conor in an immediate rematch. I'm not saying he can't win. I think Conor can win any fight if he does land, if he can, fight to his strengths. But I think what we saw on Saturday night was just proof that Khabib is a very, very difficult fight stylistically for him. So I just think it's a very bad fight for him. But if you look at the numbers, the reported numbers that are coming out now for what they sold on pay-per-view, it's going to look like it's going to be the fourth highest selling pay-per-view of all time in combat sports, in pay-per-view history. Doesn't matter, not boxing. Included. Exactly. It's not going to hit that 3 million mark where the UFC kind of reported, but it might hit around 2.4 million according to the reports that are coming out. Plus, if you look at the prelims have done the best rating since Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey, that kind of card. So both of them compounded on each other. The bad blood, the brawl. I think the UFC are absolutely loving this. And now, if I'm Dana White coming to you, and even if I'm Dana White of the past who looks at that fight, maybe not the past, but if I'm the good guy Dana White who looks at that fight and say, no, Conor's not ready for a rematch, but I'm going to you and you're the stockholders, you're the guy who is looking at what we just made on this and people are still talking about it. It's Thursday. It's almost been a week. We're still talking about it. We're still breaking it down. I come to you and say, no, we're not going to do this. That fight was not competitive. Your answer would probably be, that doesn't matter in the slightest. It doesn't matter that it wasn't competitive. We're going to do this rematch because look at the numbers it's done. People are still talking about it.
If you're just about money, which is a weird thing, right? Like, so I'll just outright say this. We've benefited tremendously from Khabib's win, and more so than his win, his antics afterwards. I mean, we had a video that was at like 1.5 million views. Literally is at like 5.5 million now. It was the interesting facts. No, it wasn't. It's at 4.5. It's the what Conor said to Khabib analysis. So we benefited from it tremendously. Yeah. But I don't care about that. Like, I mean, obviously, yeah, it's nice to have some extra money in your pocket. But like, I'm a fan first. And I like to think, obviously, Dana White doesn't have control over everybody above him. And Dana White might very well just go for the bottom line himself. I mean, if you are just motivated by bottom line, then yeah, the stars may never align again. Conor, might go fight somewhere else. He might go fight, I don't know,
Diaz,
he might
maybe.
fight Diaz again and get squashed again. He might get squashed. So that you could see that from a stakeholder's point of view, a strictly monetary point of view, where they wouldn't want to let this go. I do hope that cooler heads prevail, though, and that they think about the sport first, which doesn't happen often. But I really, really hope they would, because honestly, when you look at immediate title rematches, there's only like one or two in the history of immediate title rematches in MMA, period, where the person who lost in the first match came back and that's exactly what just happened with who was it? TJ Dillashaw and Garbrandt. Cejudo won, but it wasn't an immediate rematch. There was, some extra fights.
And a lot of those fights were close.
Immediate rematches. Yeah.
And that fight on Saturday night was not close.
No. Not at all. Yeah, like at least in Garbrandt's case, Garbrandt almost knocked him out, in the first round. He was like one missed punch away from probably putting his lights out. But in the second fight, TJ made all the necessary changes. I think there's maybe something psychologically as a fighter where you need just more of a break. You just do. You need some confidence building. I don't know what it is, but it does appear, if we're looking at this, what is it? Correlation is not causation. Like you see a trend doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Yeah, you're a data guy. You know what I'm talking about. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but there is an overwhelming correlation, I'll say that, of immediate rematches, specifically immediate rematches. I don't mean the second time people fight, with a couple of years apart. But immediate title rematches do tend to go the same way as the first. And I don't know why that is. So I think it's a bad move. I think it's a short-term play. I think it's worse for the sport. Build up the ranks. And Tony Ferguson versus Khabib is the just shouting out loud match that we all need to see. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
It'll be the 5th time they tried booking it. God damn it, this one better be successful. But man, that's the real fight that I think fans want to see, which I think actually does matter for quite a lot. We don't know how much Conor's hurt by this. Casual fans, obviously they're the wild card. They just we don't know what they'll necessarily clamp onto. They might clamp onto this, but yeah, all that circuitous, long talk to say, absolutely not. Do not do the immediate rematch.
I don't think it should happen, but to be honest, I think all roads are looking towards it. Conor asked for the rematch. Dana White came out in the media and said Conor called him and asked for the rematch. I don't think Dana White says anything if he doesn't have to. I think that was a decision he made. I think the people who he's answering to will be asking him why he's not putting this fight together. And he'll have to have a good reason for that. So I just think that all roads point towards it. But I do think it's a bad move from that perspective. But also, Conor's still a huge star. Khabib is a huge star. And I don't even know if Khabib would want this rematch. Maybe he'd want to beat up Conor again, or at least try beat up Conor again. I don't know. But yeah, I wouldn't want it to happen. But to be honest, I would not be surprised. Zafaris said, Conor is the new Ronda Rousey. We got this question on the main show as well. Do you agree with that?
I think it's kind of true. Like, I think he's so we said this about Colby Covington a lot, right? Like, Colby Covington goes like full pro wrestling heel, where he never shows like any respect towards anyone. He's like throwing up spoilers on his Twitter. So the thing I've always said about him is the moment he loses, he's going to tank hard because he talks so much shit. Conor McGregor is like that times 10. Conor McGregor, the difference I say between Conor McGregor and him is Conor McGregor is at least respectful. I mean, like, Conor McGregor might be a dick towards Dana one minute, but the next minute he's calling him a Don and he's, saying the OG of the fight game and giving him a drink, or he's really respectful to the fans and he's saying stuff like, I swear I've done this for us, when he won the interim title. He at least was kind towards his fans. And so I do think that there's definitely some people being retained. Whereas Ronda Rousey, she just kind of said, fuck you guys and fuck the media and fuck everybody. It's their fault that I lost. She didn't outright say that, but she basically was saying things like that, saying that she was under too much pressure and she was blaming other people for it. Yeah. She was saying it's an honor to hear her speak. I do think that Ronda Rousey has done quite a bit worse, but Conor McGregor is not far from there right now. Conor McGregor is paying for his actions, particularly in April. And then just the massive amount of shit he talks, that stuff falls back down. It either falls on the opponent and the momentum keeps going, or it falls back on you because, I mean, honestly, that's just how it works. It falls right back in your face. And in this situation, I think that's what happened. And that's the price. And that's why people don't talk a lot of shit. That's why a lot of people say, I'll take whoever the UFC gives me, because they don't want what Conor's going through right now. They don't want what any fighter, even Chael had a bit of that kickback. Chael had a lot of that kickback. So I think in this situation, Conor's definitely lost a lot of fans. I don't think he's necessarily lost box office value.
Yeah.
Maybe he has lost a lot of that. I mean, he's lost 2 huge high profile fights, his biggest fights ever, back to back. That's, 6 point, maybe almost 7 million people that watched on pay-per-view between Mayweather and this fight. So, I mean, it could be really, really affected. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's as bad as Ronda. Not as bad.
You took it a different way. I took it as in I thought the question or the comment was more that his skills were exposed. That's the way I took it.
Oh,
which I do disagree with, and I did have this discussion with somebody before. I don't think Conor looked bad on the ground at all. I don't think he looked bad on the ground at all. I just think Khabib is so much better than pretty much everyone at that division, and he's just head and shoulders better than everybody. You could probably pick out like Kevin Lee or something who would be competitive there, and a few other guys like Tony Ferguson might be competitive just because he's really good off his back. But I thought Conor, in terms of his takedown defense, was doing everything right. In terms of being on his back, he was doing pretty much everything right. Khabib was just better. And I don't like the argument that when somebody's better than another guy, that guy got exposed. I don't think he was exposed. I think he showed a lot of good things. His hip escapes were beautiful. His transitions back to half guard and full guard were good. So I thought he showed enough that will get him by against a lot of guys in that division, just not the guys like Khabib. Khabib is on a different level, and I think people have to kind of understand that, not just think that because Khabib dominated him on the floor that Conor is this bad grappler. Even Brendan on the main show, who a lot of people think Brendan has a biased opinion towards Khabib against Conor, and even Brendan said he was impressed with Conor's ground game. Josh Thompson came out, who's a teammate of Khabib Nurmagomedov, said he was impressed with Conor's ground game. Khabib's just that good. He's just that good on the floor. I don't think Conor was exposed in his skills. We definitely know that he slows down and he has to, fix that. But I thought he looked like a brown belt, and that's what Brendan said as well. He looked like a brown belt, and that's fine.
And that's a credit to Khabib, That's a credit to him.
Khabib is just that good.
He did that well against somebody that was, I guess, outperforming just a little bit to what people expected. For me, it's just a little bit. I expected to see, I don't know. I felt it might have even been a bad performance in my mind for Conor, because he just got walloped. Like that big right hand. He didn't even see it coming.
No.
That's also so. It's one of those things. It's one of those things. If you say somebody did bad, so Conor did bad on the feet, that's saying that Khabib didn't actually do that good. He was just fighting an off fighter. So I don't want to go too far down that road. I'd just rather say that Khabib smashed him. And from what it looked like from that night, there's just that big of a skill gap between them two, especially on the ground. But there wasn't as much of a gap than you would have expected on the feet. And that takedown, faking that takedown, absolutely worked for him. It was kind of just kind of looping, like overhand right is what he caught him with, which looks like you're going for a takedown when you do it. Looks like your head's going down.
He faked the takedown and then threw the right hand. And he's fast as well, Khabib. I think people didn't realize how quick he is. Like, he was quicker than Conor, which is crazy because he's probably a bigger guy than Conor. Ralph, Jesus, I guess, said, who beat Conor the worst, Khabib or Nate?
Ooh, I would say, honestly, Nate Diaz.
Well,
because Nate Diaz bloodied him, battered him. He didn't just knock him down once, didn't kind of catch him with a flash knockdown. He started dominating him on the feet and blooding him up on the feet to the point where Conor went for a takedown, and everybody knew that was his weakness. And then he started pounding the shit out of him. There in round 2, Khabib really, really started. I thought it was going to get stopped. It was that close to getting stopped. But I felt like Diaz just thoroughly overwhelmed him.
I get that. I get that. I think
quickly,
Khabib,
very quickly.
Yeah, I thought Khabib beat him worse, just in the sense that I think after the Nate fight, I think Conor not had excuses, but he probably could look back and say, okay, I took that fight on short notice. I didn't
Right.
fight to my game plan in the first round because he clearly didn't. He was coming forward, just absolutely lobbing shots at Nate's head, as we say over here. And he just completely gassed himself out. In the Khabib fight, I thought he fought strategically in the first round, but Khabib's skill set was just too much for him. And I think that would affect Conor more. And I feel like that for me, that leads to a worse beating because I think Conor just got outskilled. Whereas the Nate Diaz fight, he was definitely outskilled. He got dropped and then got submitted.
Right.
But I just feel like Khabib imposes will more, and it was more of an even. Conor was out for some time, and I definitely think that affected him. But I still think that it's two guys coming in, knowing this fight is coming up. They've trained for this guy. They know what's going to happen, and Khabib just completely outskilled him.
I'm just talking about who got battered the most.
Yeah.
Like Conor got battered more by Diaz. So it just depends on how you answer that. Like, I mean, like he almost got knocked out on the feet. I mean, he was wobbled. He didn't get wobbled by Khabib. And Khabib gorilla choked him, is what he did. I mean, he just got it around the chin. That hurts like fuck, dude. It just does. I've had people do that just for fun. And dude, it's not even close to what you think it feels like. It's excruciating. But anyhow, I just see it as who beat him up worse. I think Diaz beat him up worse. Khabib made a stronger point by doing it sustained and not taking damage over that amount of rounds. But who actually fucked up Conor more? I think Diaz fucked him up more. I think he looks like a much more battered man at the end of Diaz's fight.
I agree with that.
Yeah, Khabib dropped him. Chill out, Eric Coltrane. I've already said that stuff. Jeez.
Jay,
he's like flipping out in the comments. Come on, man.
Jay Corillo said Diaz is out? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark.
You didn't know that?
He is.
Are you asking that like you really don't know?
It's in the thumbnail. Yeah, Diaz is out of his fight with Dustin Poirier. Poirier is technically out. Diaz didn't get injured. Poirier got injured, had to put out a fight. So Diaz tweeted and said he'll fight Khabib at any time. So it doesn't look like Diaz is going to be on that UFC 230 card. Let's move away from the Conor and Khabib stuff for a while. We can talk about some other stuff. If you want to talk about some more Conor and Khabib stuff, send us some questions a little bit and we'll get back to it. But we're going to try answer some more questions now because I feel like we kind of just went deep on our thoughts on that one. So let's get into the questions.
It's fun. Not going to lie.
It's fun. So Diaz is out. What was your thoughts when you seen this? I woke up to this news. I don't know. That's probably late for you, was it?
The Diaz one. Well, I guess Poirier dropping out. Yeah, that happens pretty late at night.
Yeah.
I want to say it was around like 9 or 10, and I was in bed within the next hour or so. And then we heard from Diaz shortly after that, kind of saying he'll wait for Khabib. Yeah. I don't think he's going to get that fight. No. I honestly don't think he deserves that fight.
No.
I think it would sell. I mean, it'd be like it's almost like if Conor's the anti-hero and these are the two guys that kind of are I don't know, what do you even call it? Because Conor's almost like the villain now, and these guys are almost like the heroes. But on one end, you could see them as the villains too. It's like, I don't know, it just depends on your own perspective. But it's like the two guys that beat Conor, and they also beat him really badly. What do these guys do when they're up against each other? I think it sells. There's no doubt about that. But he's number 10. And the thing that we have is we have this dichotomous thing that keeps coming back and forth. Like on one end, we hate interim belts, but then we wanted Diaz as number 10 to be fighting for the 165-pound belt. What do we want? We're super, what's the word I'm looking for? Schizophrenic about this, bipolar about this. We can't decide. I think if you want to see if you want to see rankings for real, be for real, stick to that. I get the idea that's 230 and you want a big main event, but that's not a good reason to. I mean, like, what does that say to all the guys at the top of the division that are in the top 5? That says what you do doesn't matter. And that's the thing that sucks. And that's the thing that we've all kind of hated about this Conor era, about even the Ronda era. A lot of people don't think. I mean, I thought. I mean, she earned her place. It was just a period of time. I don't know. We could get down that road. But anyhow, the point is, basically like we're going back and forth and saying that we like these things and we don't like line cutting. We want rankings to matter, but on the exact same token, we're like 165-pound title. Let's do it. These are two big fighters. It's UFC 230. Yeah, I was against the idea the entire time. Does not make sense to me. You got to do it with the best guys, either out of 155 or 165, or sorry, 170, or you got to do a tournament. You got to do something that actually makes it make sense for them two to be fighting. If you're ranked number 10, you have no business in a title fight unless you're pulling an Ali Quinta against Khabib. That made sense because it was the last thing, and they did it to literally save the main event. That's the only time you do it. Otherwise, it would have been fine just at 155. But anyhow, yeah, I'm not behind Khabib versus Diaz. This is where that all sprouted from. I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever. I think it makes money. But if you're talking about the long-term health of the sport, it makes zero sense. And I think what you do is you do Khabib versus Tony fucking Ferguson, because that fight is incredible. That fight is so good. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that fight makes any sense either. The Khabib versus Nate fight. It's very disappointing now that that fight is off, the Poirier fight, because that was probably one of my most anticipated fights of the year. And it's a non-title fight. I was hoping they were going to just throw 5 rounds on it, just throw it on it, put it in the main event or something. It wasn't going to happen, but I'm still very, very disappointed in that. We have a replacement. We have Derrick Lewis coming in to fight 3 weeks after he kind of makes himself a star with his post-fight comments and his very, very late knockout over Volkov. He's coming in to fight Daniel Cormier in a fight that a lot of people are counting him out in. A lot of people have issues with it as well. What was your thoughts on when you saw Derrick Lewis announced to fight for the title in a couple of weeks?
Well, it's a tough one, right? Because it's, Stipe, a lot of people thought he deserved an immediate rematch. But it kind of falls back into this line of what I was saying earlier. And it's an intangible. It's not an exact science. But like I said, there's an overwhelming correlation of people losing the first fight and losing again in the immediate rematch. Again, the immediate, especially with title rematches. I don't think I think that the person who lost needs a bit of separation. They need to get kind of the wind beneath their wings again. What is this, like some cheesy like 90s song? Like they need that opportunity to kind of reset themselves and go back at their opponent again. That's what I personally think. But Curtis Blades, there's no reason why they couldn't have switched him out. There's no reason why they couldn't have taken him out of his fight with Ngannou, which I believe is November 24th, I want to say. There's no reason why they couldn't have switched him out. And I don't think they should have necessarily put in Derrick Lewis there, but they could have found an opponent for Ngannou. Yeah. It's just one of those things where that's the excuse you do make, though, is that he was already booked in a fight. And you throw Derrick Lewis in there, and Derrick Lewis is ready and willing. But I think so was Curtis Blades. So it's a tough one. It's not as bad as some of these other ones, considering the fact that he also beat Ngannou. Derrick Lewis did. That is one of the worst fights ever. But it is one of those things where it's like I'm on board with it. Yeah. Cautiously, it's teetering on that line of what is Derrick Lewis rated right now? By the way, I'll check it out.
You can check it out.
Let me look it up.
To be honest, I don't have a huge amount of problems with it, aside from the fact that he only fought a few weeks ago and he probably should be on some kind of medical suspension because Volkov landed a lot of big shots on him. Aside from that, if you want to take that away, sometimes fights coming in, they don't have to be competitive. They just don't. I think rankings and I think your record is enough. And I think Derrick Lewis, if you look at his record over the past few fights, how can you really deny him? How can you deny him a title fight? You can say it's too soon. You can say that he has no chance. Those are different arguments. But how can you deny a title fight when he has beat the likes of Alexander Volkov, Francis Ngannou, who Alexander Volkov could have been challenging for a title if he beat Derrick Lewis. You wouldn't argue with that. Francis Ngannou did challenge for a title. You can talk about the fight and how bad it was all you like, but it was still a victory for Derrick Lewis. He has wins over Travis Brown. He has wins over Roy Nelson, and of course they're out of the promotion now. But he's only lost one fight in the last couple of years. So to be honest, I don't have a huge amount of problems with it. And they needed to fill that spot. I feel sorry for Sijara Eubanks because she got shafted and she was told she was getting a title fight, albeit it wasn't, a very deserved, I suppose, matchup, but I still feel sorry for her being told, you're getting this matchup, and then actually no, we have a better option. And to me, to be honest, for the UFC, it's a real strike while the iron's hot type thing, where they saw Derrick Lewis, oh my god, he got 500,000 Instagram followers, let's put him in a fight with Daniel Cormier, maybe that will sell. Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier was an excellent fight, an excellent matchup coming in. It was a super fight for a lot of fans. For me, it was a super fight, but it didn't sell to the level of what a super fight should have sold. So I don't blame them for not doing that rematch. So for me, I don't have a huge amount of problems with it. The health thing is a big one, and the fact that he said on the biggest pay-per-view of all time, I'm not fighting for a title anytime soon. My cardio is shit, basically.
I know. What are the odds of that?
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, it is ironic because I'm looking at this, and actually Derrick Lewis is rated above Curtis Blades. He's rated at number 2, where Curtis Blades is rated at number 3. Although Curtis Blades has been undefeated since 2016, where Derrick Lewis got defeated in 2017, just last year, with a TKO against Mark Hunt. I forgot about that fight. I don't know how that's possible. And maybe that's what the UFC was kind of banking on, is that people would just kind of forget about that. But it is interesting. So, I mean, I guess they could meritocratically make the argument that, well, he's number 2, and I guess this is where the part of it sucks. I've been harping about rankings. Rankings can be really flaky themselves. So that is the part that sucks. I guess I'm just more pushing towards, hey, let's make this more consistent. Yeah. The guy with the bigger streak, Curtis Blades, should be ranked above Derrick Lewis. He just should. I don't know. It's a very bizarre thing. It's kind of like one of those things when you read that, you're just like, oh man, what? Like I'm trying to stand on some sort of solid ground. It's like, here's the most objective thing you can look at the rankings, and then when you really look at it, you do find stuff like this time and time again, where you're like, this is a lot based on popularity too. It's not objective. It's not, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's not some sort of intrinsic level of anything. So it's a bit frustrating.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next question, if you can give this a thumbs up. Jason eloquently put this in one of the live chats, that to tell YouTube that you like this video and to help us out, clicking that thumbs up actually helps quite a bit. So if even like 40% of the people who are in this live chat right now does that, that would be very, very helpful. Or if 100% do it, that'd be really helpful. You can also subscribe to the channel. We do these every Thursday, and we have a main show, the main, obviously, Fight Talk show that comes out every Tuesday, where we have guests and stuff like that. So you can check that out, and check out MMA on Point. It's phenomenal. One of my favorite YouTube channels out there. Jason is over there doing his narrations. Yeah,
the best in the world. We definitely do appreciate any support. These chats are, as you can tell, they're almost like a chance to air the sales out. Because, I mean, some of this stuff, you really are getting hot takes. Like, maybe I've talked to a friend about it, but it's not like at length. And to be honest, especially the stuff that's happened over the past week, there's just been a bit of this, like, fuck. Like, you're decompressing on it. And so for some reason, by the time Thursday comes, these takes that we end up getting out are very much more fresh. So if you guys do enjoy this and you don't mind us rambling on forever, it is extremely, extremely helpful. It literally tells YouTube that people like this and they should suggest it more on people's homepages. So enough of that.
This is funny. Somebody with the username of Khabib Nurmagomedov asked, do you guys think that Zubaira Tukhugov will be fired, will be released from his UFC contract?
It's a lose-lose situation.
Yes.
Because if they don't do it, it looks like they're just kind of condoning what happened. Again, they're repeating the same mistake twice with Conor. They're bending to the will of the power of their fighters. They're kind of losing control of their organization. On the other end of things, though, you're talking about a massive fan backlash, and you're talking about a fighter willing to pull away from the sport, who is arguably, I would say, easily in the top 5, maybe top 3 stars right now. You got
Khabib.
I don't know. It's tough. Yeah. Because, you've got GSP in there still, who's going to come back eventually, supposedly one day. You've got John Jones, who's back. But John Jones is, a damaged reputation. But you do have DC, and DC is not going to be around for much longer. You've got Nate Diaz, who's still that wild card if he ever comes back. But as far as consistent people, Khabib and DC are the most consistent. Absolutely, no doubt about that. So it would suck to lose them. I don't think they will lose him. I think they would go through a lengthy kind of lawsuit, and he'd be stuck in contractual hell, kind of like Vanderlei was after he failed his test. And then he was like, oh, the UFC fixes fights. And and then they sued him because they're like, wait, you can't just say that. Yeah. We're going to sue your ass off. But so I think it's a tough situation. I don't know what they're going to do, dude. It sucks. They can't make a right decision here. Yeah. Either way they go with it blows. Maybe they do a compromise and they suspend him for a while. Maybe they do that. For
me, I think it's going to be like a suspension. Can you fine him? How much money does the guy have? He's probably on the lower end of UFC contracts. I think a suspension, pull him from the Artem fight, and I guess that's it. I don't think they'll release him because I do think they'll take Khabib's threat seriously, because Khabib doesn't seem like the guy who jokes around. We saw that on Saturday night. He doesn't seem like that type. So yeah, I don't think they will. Xpernix said, let's not forget about Jones versus Gus too. Let's talk about it. John Jones will be making his UFC return in December, late December. We kind of expected him to be back this year because his whole drug fiasco finished. We'll not talk about that. We'll just talk about his return. Is this the correct matchup? Jones versus Gustafsson 2.
I think it's the best fight. I've on one of my lists, I rated this as the best title fight in UFC history.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, and obviously this one isn't a title. Well, no, it is. They're going for the
interim.
They're going for the undisputed,
vacant
right?
Title. Yeah,
the vacant title, which I do think is the right move. Who is Cormier going to face? At 205 right now. He doesn't seem to want to fight Gus again. He doesn't want to fight Ilir Latifi. Like, he said that. He said that out loud. He was talking about fighting Shogun, and then Shogun lost against Anthony Smith. So it's one of these kind of things where I don't think he wants to make that cut again. He was a lot bigger in July. He'd have to lose a lot more weight in order to fight again. I think it's the right move. It does kind of make an interesting argument about double champs. Maybe this phase is over.
Yeah.
I like seeing them fight, but maybe you just either leave one or you go back to your division, and you fucked up the division above you, that kind of thing. But I mean,
it doesn't seem sustainable, does it? The double champ thing.
I mean, what did Conor win on like November 12th against Alvarez? And then on like the 24th or the 26th, somewhere around there, he was stripped of the 145-pound belt, and it took forever, obviously, for the 155. So that didn't last long. He sort of was double champ, kind of.
It's tough, though, because of the weight classes, I feel, and we can kind of talk about the 165 if people want to chat about that. Do you agree that there should be a 165 division? Comment now. But maybe because of the weight classes, the big disparity between weight classes, it's probably not really sustainable for a fighter to hold two belts and make that cut, between fights,
I think it's an indictment on this idea. It's exciting. It's fun. It shows that somebody's willing to fight anybody. So we really liked it for Cormier. And at the time, it was a very popular decision for Conor to fight at 205. And Khabib was used as a pawn in that. It's just funny how much times have changed, because when you watch that press conference, everybody was on Conor's side. But then again, everybody was on Conor's side there in the arena. So it's really the hardcore fans that I think we're talking about here. But either way, I remember people flipping out about that. I think this phase with experimenting with two belts at the same time, I think it's done, honestly. It's just not sustainable. It hasn't worked out. And the only two instances it's happened, it's fell apart really quickly. I know DC still wants to hold on that, but I mean, it's been since July, and he's not even talking about who he's facing at 205 next. There was a little bit about John Jones, but they couldn't make it for the end of the year. But magically, he could make it against Derrick Lewis, and John Jones could make it against Gustafsson. So it's interesting, right? But I do think it is the right fight. Gustafsson gave him the best fight of his entire career. We'll find out whether or not. I mean, actually, Gus has been on a longer layoff than John Jones has.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he fought against what is it, Glover?
Yeah.
Let me look at his record, because obviously it was July of last year that Jones fought DC, and then everything got overturned.
Yeah,
And
Glover.
for
May
Glover it
20,
was
2017.
yeah. So I
Wow.
mean, you got to how wild is that? 2 months before, he hasn't had a suspension. He's just fallen off of fights. He's supposed to fight a couple different times throughout this year, and it just hasn't worked out for him. So, but I do think it's the right fight. Stylistically, it's the best matchup. It's the toughest matchup that John Jones has ever had. It's the only guy to really, really push him. A lot of people even thought Gus won the first fight. So I think it's the best fight to make. And I do think, I mean, people are like, are you rewarding Jones? Are you doing all that? Dude, I don't have a good enough answer for that. I don't. It just, the whole situation sucks. I think USADA will end up being repealed in a couple of years. It's like Dana White went on the record talking about Sean O'Malley, saying that he didn't think he did anything. Like, he was like, if you're catching guys like Sean O'Malley, then there's something wrong with USADA. He was like, it's trace amounts. And I'm not defending John Jones, but I am just kind of saying that I think this is all about to change, all this testing stuff, and it needs to be revamped. I don't know. But anyhow, it's the right match. I think it's the toughest match for John Jones. I love this matchup. I think it's the best one to make for him coming back.
It's phenomenal, and it makes sense in so many ways for me because, as you pointed out, Gustafsson hasn't been that active. He hasn't fought in a long time. So it's not like he's coming back against this really active guy. The story's there. They've fought before. It was probably the best fight, as you said, in UFC title history. So coming back, he already has that story built in. They've wanted to fight each other, or at least Gus wants that rematch. It's for a title, and you can argue that it's the right decision by the UFC to put this title on the line. Although you can also argue that, you know, John Jones coming back from this suspension, should he really be getting a title fight? But, you know, it's the UFC, who cares? And I love it. I think it's going to be a great fight, and it's going to really tell us a lot about who John Jones is. Coming back to this one, is he going to be dedicated? Didn't seem to matter in the last one, because apparently he wasn't. And, you know, you can say that was hearsay, but so many people said it, and usually when there's smoke, there's fire. So I love this fight. I think it's an excellent matchup.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better title fight that you can honestly make. Like, all the bullshit aside, I think it's the funnest matchup that you can make right now. Like, I like it more than the DC fight. I honestly do. Like, competitively, nobody has pushed it to John Jones like he has. And for those first, what is it, the second round that DC got finished in the last fight, you know, obviously this got overturned to a no contest, but he was, you know, giving him a bit of trouble early on in the fight, but he still got stopped, and Gus didn't. Gus was giving it to him the entire fight. So I think this is the best actual fight. Like, bullshit aside, everything that sucks about the sport, everything that sucks about John Jones, all of that aside, the best fight, which is at the end of the day what I'm paying to see, that I think it's the best one to make.
Yeah, if you actually look at the card as well, it's actually pretty good so far. From what is announced, you have the title fight, the John Jones versus Gustafsson fight. You also have the featherweight title fight, the women's featherweight title fight between Chris Cyborg and Amanda Nunes. You have a light heavyweight bout between Ilir Latifi and Corey Anderson. That's an interesting one. BJ Penn is on the card against Ryan Hall. And a welterweight bout, Michael Chiesa's first foray into welterweight against the natural born killer in Carlos Condit. So that's pretty good. And I heard they're also trying to match up Tom Duquesnoy and Nathaniel Wood, who are well known on these parts, and I'm sure a lot of guys over that side of the world as well have seen them. And that's just the definition of an action fight. So looks like a really good card so far. Really, really good card.
Yeah, there's no doubt that, and it kind of seems like the end of last year went this way too. It's the end of this year is just so much better than the beginning of it was. And I don't know why. It just happened to work out that way last year too. You know, we had like Holly Holm Durandamy at the beginning of the year and stuff like that. But by the end of it, we had GSP versus Bisping, and TJ Dillashaw versus Garbrandt 1, and Rose versus Joanna 1, and like all that stuff happened at the end of the year. And it feels like it's happening again at the end of this year.
Yeah.
Now, although the start of the year was really strong this year. You know, we had, what was it, Stipe versus Ngannou and Volkov versus DC on the same card. I mean, we did have the rest of the card wasn't that good, but the co-main and the main event were incredible. So it's not quite as bad as 2017 was, but the end of this year, it's ending extremely well.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question. Savage101 said, Khabib versus GSP is the fight to make. Facts, but I don't think GSP would take it. It's a tough fight for him. Then he said, what's your thoughts on Khabib versus GSP?
Well, GSP's talked a lot about legacy and what would build his legacy. And right now, I mean, Khabib is as big as any star in the UFC. Except for maybe Conor. Conor is that weird pay-per-view selling guy. And we don't know if that's still the case. That could be diminished after 2 huge losses, like I was saying earlier. But in terms of legacy, I mean, Khabib does that for him. I think he checks every box. It's a third belt. It's a guy who's perceived as dominant, unstoppable, literally undefeated this far into his UFC career and everything else. It is a legacy fight for GSP. The only other part of that, though, and GSP has admitted as much, it basically take the belt and run. So that sucks for the UFC. That really does suck. You want to see somebody I love the old GSP and Anderson Silva days. I love seeing those guys take over the belt. I mean, the Fedor days. I love seeing somebody. Era,
wasn't it?
Oh man, I think that we're in the best time in the world in MMA. I really do think that. I think a lot of people, they tend to look at the past and they always think it's better. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's not fighting. It's everything. It's everything. If people do that, they're like, oh, music was better when I was a kid.
Yeah. Nintendo 64 is better than the PlayStation 4. It's it's not really, boy. I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's it was better because you didn't have DLC and all that shit. People will make a case even though it's technology, which is really hard to make that case for. I think that's just the thing. People always do that. That's a weird, mental trick that everyone kind of goes through, and you just kind of have to push that aside. And it's no, that's actually kind of bullshit. I feel like the UFC is more accessible. It's on more places. And there's more big fights happening all the time. That to too much of a degree, I think. I do think there is an oversaturation. But anyhow, and the stuff that Bellator is doing this weekend, it's incredible, I do want to get to that too. But it just shows that MMA is in a really, really good spot right now. And everything that's going on, it really is great. And I do miss that era of people defending titles for long periods of time. And I wish that was more the case now, where people more had that mindset. I think Khabib does. I think he absolutely does. I think Max Holloway has that. And I also do think he wants to go up and fight Khabib. And God, that is, even though I just got done going on that rant about, pick one is what I would say, either decide to keep the 155 or go back to 145 if you were to somehow do the unthinkable and actually go up and beat the bigger guy who's undefeated. But anyhow, I do like the dominant era. But I do think that things are at the best they are now. And I wish USP would kind of recognize that and kind of see it from a fan's perspective. I think everybody wants to see the one-off fight, but I think they also want to see sustained dominance. At 155, they want to see if he can not only cut it out, but also get a couple defenses under his belt there. And I think that's even bigger with legacy going, because that's the one issue, that's the asterisk for the Michael Bisping fight. It looked like he jumped in at the perceived opportune time, the easiest possible champion. And dude, I just got done going on about how much I like Michael Bisping. That was at the beginning of this. But I also think he would have got murked by Yoel. I think he would have got murked by Robert Whitaker. I think would have beat him too. I think if Rockhold fought him again, I honestly think he would have lost that. I think if Weidman. So just all that to say, does more for GSP's legacy if he fights Khabib at 155 and he sticks with it. He continues defending the belt there. I think it's the best possible move for a GSP right now to do, actually.
Let me grab this up because this is interesting. I want to talk about the 165 division really quick, and then we can talk about something else. But for the record, I'm not against the 165 division. I'll tell you why. But Hassan Berhamerdinu, I fucked that up. Khabib versus GSP for the 165 pound title, Ferguson versus Conor for the interim title, and then Khabib versus the winner of Tony versus Conor. I don't quite agree with that scenario, but here's the reason why I think that a 165 division can work if the UFC do this. The unified rules was revised recently. I think it was like last year, 2017. I think it was like July 2017, and they brought in some new weight classes. They brought in the 165 pound division, which is the super lightweight division. They also have the super middleweight division and a few different ones. So it's like the 195, isn't it? And
are those also the actual names?
Yeah, that's what they call them. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
At least that's what they call them in the article that I saw. So they have super lightweight, super welterweight, super middleweight, and they also brought in the cruiserweight, which is obviously in boxing. So I think it's important to note that the way MMA weight classes came around is a bit of a shambles. There was only a couple of weight classes. Obviously, there was none at one point. Then they started bringing in weight classes, and they weren't really based around boxing or anything like that. They were kind of just thrown in there, and then they kind of fell into this system that they have now. So I don't think there's a problem of bringing in these few extra weight classes if you remove the current ones that are there. If you remove welterweight and you have the, say, 165 and then you have the middleweight division, I think it's fine. You just can't have that welterweight division there. And I think it makes sense because you have that 10 pound gap then between divisions. And I also think the argument to say that it will just ruin those other divisions, I think that's flawed, because if you actually look at the amount of fighters who fall between that range, the 170 to 155 pound range, even 145 pound range, it's insane the amount of talent that's there. And I feel like the lack of divisions almost buries that talent. Look at the flyweight division, and you can have a lot of, problems with the flyweight division, but if you actually take a look at it and look at when it came to be, Demetrius Johnson was fighting at 135 and he was being drowned. He's been drowned by Dominic Cruz. But now we just forget about that because he brought this new division in. And then what happened when Demetrius Johnson went down? Demetrius Johnson became one of the most credible champions, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world at 125. And we forgot about all those fights he lost at 135. So like at him, he was floundering at 135. He did actually get a title fight and he lost to Dominic Cruz, but he was clearly outmatched by the bigger guys. So I feel like there's a lot of guys that we almost forget about now that are like floating around that 7 to 15 pound or 15 ranking that could do excellent work at other divisions if it wasn't so crowded. I think it's a good idea. I really do think it's a good idea if they remove that welterweight division.
Well, I think it's a bit unfair to characterize it that way for DJ, because when he fought Cruz, he basically, what a lot of people believe, made the blueprint for Cody Garbrandt to beat Cruz. Because what he did, what most people got, they would just kind of fall for the traps that Cruz had. He would use all those darts and he would use all those feints. And what people would do is they would kind of rush in, and I'm basically paraphrasing BJJ Scout. He's done some incredible work on this. I definitely recommend, I don't care how old the fights are, BJJ Scout's breakdowns of these are incredible. But basically, like, somebody would go chasing in after Cruz would cut an angle and he would get out of it, and the person would stop whoever was chasing him. It didn't matter who it was, whether it was Uriah Faber or who else, The thing that Demetrius Johnson did, though, is he just flooded him. So if he missed, he just kind of kept going. And if you look at a lot of Garbrandt stuff, on top of him also getting the footwork down, he also mimicked that strategy of flooding him. And so that's why you saw Dominic Cruz taking down DJ so much, because he was actually having a lot of trouble on the feet. His typical setups weren't working. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, I guess all that to say is that's the only other loss. He only had like 2 losses at 135. He actually did really, really well at 135. And it comes down to that idea of, there's skill, but when there's so much weight between you, you could be a little bit less and still beat them. I don't think you're necessarily disagreeing with that, but I just don't want it to be like, oh, DJ sucked at 135. He was actually really great.
He was excellent. And that's not really my argument. Yeah. My argument is I think that DJ, he excelled at 125. I think he broke out from the pack at 125. And sure, he didn't become a star, but I don't think that's just down. I can't, just because you say that 125 was maybe a failure, you can argue that, some people think it is. But I just feel like there's plenty of guys that are kind of stuck in that kind of mid-card range at both 170, at 155, that you can build up a really solid division that in like 2-3 years, if we made the 165 division now, and you had, say, 155, 165, and 175, say, so you have the 10-pound gap in between.
Yeah.
If you bring those three divisions in, you could have someone like, I don't know, Edson Barbosa absolutely ruling the 165-pound division, or 175, wherever he'd fall, probably 165, say, or someone like Kevin Lee absolutely ruling that division. But maybe he wouldn't have quite got to that level at 155 because it was so log jammed, it was so packed. But we would just forget about that. We would look at him as a credible champion at 165, and we'd almost then argue, oh, what happens if he goes back to 55? He could probably beat these guys now. You know, it just gives more space, I think, that 10-pound gap. I think it's wrong if you bring it in if you only have the 5-pound gap between, 65 and 70. I don't like that at all.
Yeah,
but if they do space that out to 10 pounds, I'm all for it. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I was really against the Diaz. I mean, Diaz versus Poirier made no sense to me based on their own rankings. But for 165, then 175 to exist, and then 195, basically adding those divisions and shifting 170 to 175. I haven't been the hottest on it, especially when it comes to 205. I don't know about 195 because 185.
It's a bit shallow.
It's gone through, I feel like it was really, really deep a couple of years ago, and I feel like it's kind of shallowed out a little bit. Gegard Mousasi was only one fighter, but I feel like that left a huge hole. It kind of shifted things around a weird way, where Yoel ended up fighting Robert Whittaker twice, just in 1 year's time, or, Luke Rockhold losing to Yoel and, having some really devastating losses, Chris Weidman. I think it's one of those things where I don't know if there's enough for 195, but I do think there is enough for 165.
Sure.
I don't necessarily. I don't think it solves any weight cutting issues for those fighters.
No,
I think it makes it worse for 170 guys going down, and I think for 155 guys they'll just bulk up. I don't think it necessarily solves that, but I do think there's enough fighters between those two divisions to make another one. I do think it's definitely possible for that. I feel conflicted about it. I'm not going to lie.
I think as well. I don't think it helps that it was almost coming as just a reactionary thing for the UFC, even though the UFC apparently weren't on board for it. But when the news came out that was probably going to happen, it seemed like they need to plug a hole and they're creating a whole new division for it. And I think it soured me on it, and I was against it completely. But I think if the UFC planned it out properly, I think there's plenty of guys there. MMA Buds actually put a comment in the chat and said actual stats 155 and 170 divisions equal 30% of the roster. That's according to Nick Baldwin's Bloody Elbow article. So 30% of the roster is at those two weight divisions. I think there's plenty of guys to fill those two divisions, and it wouldn't be shallow. Could I be wrong? Possibly, but I personally do think there is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it makes a lot of sense to possibly create that division.
Yeah. What a bit of work.
Yeah.
Plan it out.
Yeah. Actually plan it out. Don't do it last minute. Don't do it just because you can. Even if you go look at when 205 was realigned from, what was it? It was actually 200 when they used to call it middleweight. And you look at when welterweight was actually set up, because that used to. What did that just used to mean? Yeah, because middleweight just used to be 200 and under, and 170 and under for welterweight. Mm-hmm. They created a couple events before that even debuted. They realigned those divisions, or renamed middleweight to light heavy, and they set up middleweight, and then finally just made it to where it was 170. They did that about an event before that. No, it was lightweight. That's what welterweight was called before that. I was like, I know I'm missing something there. Yeah. But they did that a couple events before. They actually planned that out. Yeah. And the one thing about boxing that sucks so bad is, can you tell me, somebody without Googling it, can you tell me all the divisions that exist in boxing? Can you tell me half of them? Can you tell me a quarter of them? Can you tell me what 125 is in boxing? You might be able to. I couldn't tell you. It's super, 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 super fucking confusing and super disorganized. So that's the one thing that I think Dana White, actually, and the UFC, to their credit, have done a really good job with, is at least kind of setting those up. In recent years, they've kind of sucked at it. I think it was a week before the 145-pound division got started. No, it was 125. Before that got started, they basically were denying that it was happening, and then they just up and did it. So they haven't been on their game lately about it. But the best version of the UFC was more organized, at least back in the day. And I think that's the best way to do it, because then it sets up these divisions for success, in my opinion.
Completely agree. I don't think it should be done on a whim, but I do think it makes sense if they do it correctly. Akles said, what do you think of Conor apologising mid-fight? Did you see this?
Oh, I did see that. I
It's
don't know
only
if I
business?
buy it, though. I don't know if I buy it. There's like 3 or 4 different versions of what Khabib said.
Yeah.
There's like a version of him saying, guess so,
Yeah,
or
that's the one I
saying,
saw.
let's talk. There's another version of him saying, let's talk, because then it's like responding. Because when he was, it was on the BT Sport version of the broadcast,
right.
is where you're seeing him saying, oh, yeah, you want to talk now? You want to talk now? He's basically talking shit to Conor as he's almost stopping him in the second round. And then as Conor gets up, he says, it's only business. And then there's like 3 or 4 different versions of what Khabib said that are not the same words whatsoever.
Okay.
I don't necessarily buy it. I think it's highly probable. Most people do seem to buy that that's what Conor McGregor was saying. But judging how much they've gotten Khabib's stuff wrong, I don't know that I necessarily buy it. I mean, it's definitely probable. I mean, it's like maybe a 90% chance he did say that. But I don't really like jumping on the bandwagon on something like that without any real evidence of what he actually said. Like, I don't know what he said, like, I mean, Khabib, like, they're literally saying Khabib said, guess so, or let's talk. Those are 2 totally different things. People are guessing what they're saying. And there's this thing, I mean, this is a psychological thing. I studied psychology in college. It's like people, they do this mental priming thing. It's like what they did for backmasking for Led Zeppelin. Like all the demonic stuff that they said when you backmasked it. Yeah. Like, it's bullshit. There's like literally a line where he says, where I live, there's a tool shed whose power is Satan. Like, wait, what the fuck does a tool shed have to do with anything?
Satan.
Yeah. But there's a little bit of a mental priming thing that you do when you place words on the screen, or you think you hear it. And if you listen to something over and over and over and you have to convince yourself of something, that's almost like convincing yourself to believe something. So I think it's entirely possible that's what Conor said. Conor was getting his ass beat. So it's totally impossible. He's like, hey, man, chill out. Like I get that perspective. And Conor was getting, I've said it many times, he was getting walloped. He was getting destroyed. But I don't necessarily buy what a fan tells me he said on a murky recording. That's just my thought. Like, because they've gotten it wrong like 3 or 4 different times. I've seen it on really, really prominent YouTube videos or Twitter videos where they've literally been saying, oh, let's go, or what was it? Let's talk, or guess so. Those 2 different sayings. And there was a third one too that I just can't remember. But those are 2 entirely different sayings. For them to get it so wrong in Khabib so many times tells me that they may not have it right on Conor. So
possibly, yeah. The one I saw was the one where he said it's only business, and then he said, what was it? What was the first one that you said?
Guess so.
Guess so. Yeah, that's the one that I saw. So I didn't see anything else. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know which one is real. I didn't take too much from it though, to be honest. Didn't take too much from it. A lot of people talking about Zabit in the chat. A lot of people can't wait to see Zabit Magomed Sharapov fight again. Who is he fighting next? Is he matched up?
They're trying to go for Zaire again, or Yair.
Zaire. Yeah.
Have they actually made that one official yet?
I don't know. That seems to be another course fight. But man, yeah, Zabit's a beast. I'd love to see the Zaire. Oh my God, you're making me say it now. I'd love to see the Yair fight, but I don't think it's completely necessary. I don't think they need to go. They need to really, really make that fight. I think there's plenty of fights there for Zabit and Yair. It's hard to say now after you said that.
Yair.
Yeah, Yair.
I don't know where that even came.
Thoughts on Zabit? I guess people want to talk about him.
Yeah, man. That Yair fight, though, I'm right there with it. I mean, it's kind of like it's obviously not on par with the Khabib Tony fight, because that one's had so much time and it's literally had a title implication with it. But the Yair fight just seems like the right fight to make. I think Zabit takes it because he's got the ground game to go with it. He's got so much going for him.
He's a beast.
And that guy, oh my God, I think he's the next big star.
I think
he's.
Yeah. Have you ever heard him talk?
I saw like the interview where he was talking about when he'd be called the Beast right before the last fight.
Bit of personality there.
His accent's getting there. It's
Sweet.
not terrible.
That's
It's
good.
getting there.
Bellator is on this weekend as well. I want to touch on that a little bit before we do leave the chat. They have 2 events on. First things first, they have one on Friday and they have one on Saturday. What's your thoughts on Bellator holding 2 events in 2 days?
Why do this? I'm also super confused too because it says Paramount Network and DAZN, so I guess that means it's going to air on both of them. That just seems really odd to me, but I'm happy that it's on DAZN because I went ahead and signed up for that. I actually signed up for it right before the Anthony Joshua fight against Povetkin, which was great. Fantastic fight. And then, of course, watching the Bellator fight, Gegard versus Poirier. What a one-sided fight that ended up turning out to be. Totally shocked by that. Great card overall, though. I mean, Aaron Pico looked like a star. Incredible. So I think it's a good move to move towards DAZN. I don't get Friday and Saturday. It's a lot to ask of people. I mean, what do you think? The major demographic is what, 18 to 35 males? You're trying to get them to stay home on a Friday and Saturday night. I'm enough of a dork to where I will be home for those. I think a lot of that audience, especially, you're trying to catch a lot of those people that are kind of on the edge, right? You're trying to bring in new people. That's a tough one to bring people in for both nights. I don't get it. It could easily be one card. So yeah, it's a lot.
Get your quick thoughts on the 2 main events from each card because they're important fights. They're the semi-finals of the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix. The first one that goes down on Friday was Matt Mitrione versus Ryan Bader. What's your thoughts on that fight?
I definitely think Bader takes this one. When you go back, I mean, like Chuck Congo was able to control Matt Mitrione on the ground. He's just not somebody who's really well developed there. He came out of football. He's more of, when he came into MMA, he's more of a stand-up guy. Just never really worked his ground game, and that's the tough thing that I think is even tougher than it is with the smaller guys. The classic saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Nice.
But it's also that much harder to get up. It just is. So I do think that Bader is going to control Mitrione unless he gets clipped coming in, which is always possible. But I think once Bader gets it to the ground, Bader's a big guy too. I know he's coming from light heavyweight, but he could easily be a heavyweight when you see the shape a lot of these heavyweight guys are in.
Yeah.
And Mitrione is not a cut guy whatsoever. I think Bader will be pretty big on the night of, and I don't think he'll have any problems with the size of Mitrione at all. And I think he'll dominate him on the ground, and I think fans might be booing by the end of the night. That's what I honestly think. Fedor was a tough one.
Fedor
or
Chael.
Yeah, because he's the bigger guy, but Fedor's got the sambo behind it. He's got the submissions.
And he's not slow
how many
either.
guys? And he's not slow. I mean, this is a long time ago, but I mean, you look back at guys like Kevin Randleman that just slammed him into oblivion, and he reversed the situation from north-south like it was nothing. You know what I mean? So I do think that he actually is really good off of his bag historically. And wrestlers have not been able to touch that. They just haven't in the past. And obviously he's got a way more developed stand-up game than Chael Sonnen does. So my predictions are Fedor versus Bader. And then from there, I'll just go ahead and say, going against everything I just said, maybe just because Bader's younger, that he'll be able to overwhelm Fedor. So I'm actually predicting Bader wins the whole tournament.
Nice. I'm not too far off. I think it's a difficult one to call. Both fights in a way, because Fedor hasn't been very good over his last few fights. Remember the Maldonado fight? That was a train wreck. So I think Chael can win that fight, but I don't know. I think Fedor does have the speed and still will be the bigger guy. I don't think he'll be too much bigger, but I think he will still have the speed to go along with Chael. And I think Bader might win as well, although Matt Mitrione is usually good against smaller guys, so it's a tough one. You also want to have on the card Roy Nelson against Sergey Karatanov. That's a bit of a blast from the past, Karatanov. Baby Slices on the card as well, on one of the cards. So it's an interesting night for Bellator. I'm going to watch it. Probably won't. I doubt I'll watch it live. I'll watch it, Sunday or something.
Oh,
Get
right.
both cards, watch them. But
4 a.m.
Yeah, just cram them. But interesting night for Bellator. Still very strange they're putting both fights on the one night. But hey, whatever.
Yeah, they've got a lot of star power, you know. Benson Henderson, Shlemenko, one of their former champions, against Anatoly Tokov. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but he's looked really good.
Yeah.
Chet Congo, speaking of Chet Congo, is fighting another UFC vet, Timothy Johnson, on Saturday. So I think they've got some great fights.
Yeah. Somebody asked what the co-main event of UFC 230 is. Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold, is that going to be it now?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be now.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only thing. It is interesting, though, that at least I'll refresh the page just to make sure.
Yeah.
But the UFC still hasn't taken down Poirier versus Diaz.
Oh
they
my
might
God.
still be trying to work on something for Diaz, but
Then take Poirier down then.
Yeah, like trying to get the Diaz brothers to do what they don't want to do, and it already sounds like Diaz doesn't want to fight against, you know, just a last-minute replacement. It's like herding cats. I don't think it's going to happen for him, you know?
Yeah. I said somebody said that was Caleb Wallace. Sorry about that. Caleb?
I don't know. I haven't seen it, but it sounds like Caleb.
Give us the phonetics and we'll call it out. There's just something here. This is the good thing about these live chats. Sometimes you can get breaking news, or at least, you know, breaking tweets. Nate Diaz just tweeted to Dana White. Dana White, so at Dana White, please let Khabib's dumbass friends stay in the UFC. Fire me and it'll be better this way. I think it's more fair that way.
What the fuck? What does that even mean? Why?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that would be wild. He probably would go to Bellator. He probably would do it.
He probably would. He's insane. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what happens there, man. I don't know. I think Diaz just doesn't fight on the card. I don't know. When does Diaz even fight now? You know, it's a shame.
Who does he fight? I think
we all want to see him fight.
Yeah, I think to be honest, McGregor Diaz could happen again. It possibly could, you know, if they don't do the immediate rematch. And that reminds me, I'm going to check the old poll that I put up. Does McGregor and Khabib immediately rematch? 57% of people in this chat said yes.
Oh, wow.
Wow. So my argument must have won them over.
I mean, it is pretty persuasive from a financial standpoint, that's for sure.
Yeah, and fortunately, you can say unfortunately, but the UFC, that's where they're going these days, it seems. They're looking for big fights. But I think we'll leave it there. I think that was enough MMA talk for this week. Jason, do you have any good videos coming up on MMA On Point that I should be looking forward to?
Actually, Tom and I are working on a feature about Chael Sonnen versus Fedor. So I'm excited to do that one. I really wanted to do something before Gegard versus Rory, but time just didn't permit it. So I'm happy to put a focus on Bellator. And then, I don't know, my mind is going a million miles an hour. I'm thinking about actually doing an actual deep study into, was the fight bad? You know, the Khabib reaction on Sunday. Was it actually bad, by actually looking at the external sources and comparing that with the internal MMA sources? But it might just be too late by Sunday. So I don't know how much the interest is there, but I have an interest in it to actually just kind of understand that. But otherwise, I may just go a completely different route. It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
It seems like according to this live chat, majority of the questions were about that. So it seems like there's still interest right now. So we'll see what it is on the weekend. But again, thanks for joining us. If you can, click the subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're not a subscriber, go do it and subscribe to MMA On Point, and hit the like button before you leave, because again, that does help, because this will go into syndication and then people can find it afterwards, and it's all good. But Jason, thanks again for your time.
See you, man. Appreciate it.